And now we interrupt your regular viewing program to bring you these news items.
What's up, guys, and welcome to the Shifty Crab News Break. My name's Adam, and I'm one of your hosts today, and I'm joined by the best beard in the business, Mr. Vince Haley. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Adam. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. So much news to get through today.
A lot of good stuff. A lot of good news today. I'm excited.
I think we have, let's have a look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 news items today. 5.
Ooh.
I know. And who said Sunday is a slow news day?
All right. A lot of good stuff dropped over the weekend. I'm excited to talk about it.
So let's get straight into it. Our first news item of the day: Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time remake delayed again. This is from Jonathan Dornbush, from IGN.com. Ubisoft has announced that the Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time remake has been delayed again, this time without a clear new release date in mind. The developers of the remake released a statement on Twitter explaining that we have made the decision to shift the release from Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time remake to a later date. This extra development time will enable our teams to deliver a remake that feels fresh while remaining faithful to the original. The remake had previously been scheduled for release on March 18th, which it had been delayed to after plans for a January 2021 release. Vince, is this any surprise to you?
Not at all. Not at all. They showed that game off. Oh, when did they show that off? A while ago, right?
Yeah.
Oh, in September. Yes.
Yeah, it was last year, September time. Yeah.
And it looked terrible.
Oh, it did.
It looked like, I mean, it originally came out on the PS2. It still looked like it was still in that PS2 era with the graphics. That game needed so much time. January was hopeful. Apparently March was very hopeful as well, and they don't have a date just yet, but I mean, we'll see. This is probably like a summer release, maybe, if it's still 2021.
Yeah. And the thing that confused me with this game, and I was interested in this game because I remember playing the original and really enjoying it, but I hadn't realized that this is a full remake. This isn't just a remastered or anything like that. This is a re-release. This is a remake. And when you watch the trailer, it looks like it looks like it's maybe gone up half a generation on when it was first released.
Oh, yeah.
It just does not look good.
It doesn't look like a remake at all. And it's a shame because I originally liked Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time. It was one of the few games I think I actually beat on the original Xbox. So, I mean, I was hopeful. I was a little excited when they announced the game because I don't think I actually watched the live event. I was on Twitter at the time, saw they were remaking it. Then I went and watched the trailer, and oh boy, was I so disappointed in what that game looked like. I mean, yeah, delaying it is a great thing because I'm sure that game needs a lot more time to actually make it proper. I mean, it's still probably better than the Jake Gyllenhaal movie, to be honest.
Anything's better. Anything is better.
Anything.
But is this? It's a weird. Like for me, are we just now accepting that 90% of game release dates are going to get moved? Because it just seems like I can't remember the last big title game. And I'm not saying this was a big title. Like it's not a AAA release. It's a big release. But even AAAs, they just don't release on time.
Oh no!
Maybe the sports franchises, they usually release pretty, because let's face it, they don't really change anything in them.
No,
and they have to get them out before the season starts for different things. So, but yeah, it just seems to me that everything just gets delayed.
Oh yeah, I mean, COVID or the pandemic is more than responsible enough for that. I mean, you're going to see a lot of people I mean, at first trying to figure out how a work from home situation was going to go, and then slowly realizing, oh, we're not going to meet the deadline, so everything's probably going to get pushed, no matter how big or small it is. It's just kind of like they were probably expecting to definitely have this game already done and shipped. That was before people saw the game and didn't like it, and then the pandemic and everything, and had to restructure that. So it's probably also response to this, and we're probably also going to see a lot more games shifting because of that.
Yeah, and I wonder how long
Mm-hmm.
the fallout of this will be, because obviously we don't know when, well, COVID will never end, but when
Yeah.
life can return to a more structured normality of work, you go to work, you do your job, you go home, sort of scenario. Like, I wonder
Right.
how long this fallout, because you've got to presume that even, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
for hypothetical sake, we all go back September time into a more of a structured routine. A lot
Oh
of
yeah.
games have been in development for a long time and have lost over a year by that point of structured work. So are
Mm-hmm.
we going to see for the next 3-4 years a lot of delays, or do you think maybe after a year or so it'll start to? Because just quickly, like
Mm-hmm.
before COVID, this was starting to happen though.
Oh yeah.
It was been a lot. It's been a thing for a long time, but it seemed to be the norm now.
Mm-hmm.
When you'd see that initial trailer, and God of War was a big example of this. The original like not the original, but the previous God of War.
Yeah.
When you saw the original trailer of that at E3, and when you saw the first date that came up with that, everyone was like, "Wow, never going to make it." Like
No.
it seems to be the norm now, and I don't know. I don't know. That's maybe just my feeling on it.
It's very much of probably biting off more than they can chew, because
Yeah.
you want to see, obviously, also investors want to see a solid date that they can hit. But as you put that pressure in and crunch becomes a thing and more poured on, and now people are kind of easing back from that, I would assume, hopefully, you're going to see that
Yeah.
date extended anyway. I mean, it's a
I just think companies shouldn't put
good.
a set day. I think they
Mm-hmm.
should aim for a year,
Oh, yeah.
and then when you get to that year,
Mm-hmm.
you give a month and a day. You know, structure your
Oh,
release
yeah.
of when it's going to be. I know they like to put it in early. Helps with the quarterly finances. It helps with investors and stuff like that. I
Mm-hmm.
totally understand that, but from a selfish point, I'm impatient anyway, but I'm not one of them that wants a game that's not finished. But if there's a date where
Right.
something is supposed to be, or a time when something is supposed to be,
Mm-hmm.
it needs to be that day or time for me. I hate people being late or
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. So it annoys me, but
Oh, yeah.
I understand the reasons why. And I would rather something
Mm-hmm.
was delayed than people do crunch and stuff like this. But
That's true.
yeah, I just hate when they put a date out because you just can't
Mm-hmm.
trust it anymore.
No, I
Like,
mean, I'm old enough to remember the infamous Halo 2 tattoo that one of the devs got to show off the release date,
it was
and it
like,
missed that release date. It
yeah.
was delayed.
I remember GTA San Andreas when that got pushed, and that was the first big game for me that got pushed, where I had been waiting and waiting and waiting and reading every single thing about it. Me and
Mm.
an old friend of mine, we used to go on MSN at night and MSN chat, like AOL chat, and send links to each other and pictures and going, it's going to be this big. If you walk around it, it's going to take you this many hours. Like, and we'd
Mm.
share stuff all the time, theories and images. And that game got delayed, and it was heartbreaking.
Oh, I'm
I was
sure.
only a young teenager at the time. I wasn't even old enough to really buy the game. But
Right.
oh god, it was heartbreaking.
I
So
bet.
yeah, well,
A shame.
hopefully this delay only means good things for the game.
Fingers crossed. I mean,
Hmm.
like I said, I'd be excited to play Prince of Persia again.
Yeah.
And a remake seems like a good chance
I'd
for
rather have
more
had
people to jump on that franchise. Yeah.
yeah, true. I'd have rather had just a current gen new Prince of Persia, to be honest. But
Yeah.
like, but if they do the remake properly, like, and it looks better than it did like last year, then we shall see.
We shall
Anyway,
see. Fingers crossed.
moving on from one remake to another, we're going to talk about Mass Effect Legendary Edition. You can probably guess what we're going to talk about. Mass Effect Legendary Edition changes some gratuitous camera shots. The developers stopped short of changing character models for the remaster. This is from Jordan Ollerman from IGN News. BioWare have altered some camera shots from the Mass Effect series for the Mass Effect Legendary Edition remaster package. In an interview with Metro, Mass Effect Legendary Edition's project director, Mac Walters, said that the team changed certain camera angles that were deemed gratuitous. Kevin actually called out some camera cuts that were just, why was that focusing on Miranda's butt? Walters explained. So in some cases, we said, okay, we can make a change there. That's kind of it. It goes on for quite a lot longer. It's a really interesting read if you want to head over to IGN.com and have a look at that. But yeah, Vince, they're getting rid of some of the gratuitous shots from the game.
I mean, it just makes sense, honestly.
It does. It does make sense.
Oh, yeah. Because some of those scenes where, especially when you go into the loyalty missions of your characters, and you're having this heartfelt, like, crewmate to crewmate interaction, this person to person, this basic human level, and they're opening up to you and you're wanting to help them, and then all of a sudden there's just a camera shot of someone's ass right in the lens. It's a little much, honestly.
So you're saying for the next news item, I shouldn't just put the camera on my ass and just do it all from that angle? People don't want to see. People don't want to see that.
I mean, maybe people might want to see that.
No, nobody wants to see it. Like, no, you're right. But the thing that this isn't news. Okay,
No.
this should have just been. Yes, that is what you do as the minimum. The news of this is the outrage this is causing on social media. Now, I'd say 80% of the people are absolutely fine with this, going, yeah, this is a smart thing to do. Times have changed. Those sort of angles, we're more aware of it now, I guess, and rightly so. And people had a problem then, but it was a smaller minority, and thankfully, it's a bigger majority now that think that there's a problem with them. But then there's still 20% of what I call idiots who are like, oh, but it's not the original game, then, isn't it? You're changing angles just to appeal to the crowd, or you're trying to be PC because it's cool. Like, no, they're just trying to be decent human beings, and that shouldn't be criticized.
No, it really shouldn't be. I mean, granted, it is a vocal minority that's actually complaining about that, but there's a difference between, especially going into the developer's vision side of it, because for one, this is the same developers. I mean, it's the same studio basically that's making this remake. If they want to change it, they are allowed to change it. You can't really cite developer intention there because they are taking upon themselves to change it for their vision of the series. So that argument obviously immediately falls apart.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, those scenes were gratuitous, obviously. I'm glad they're removing them. And people are a bunch of whiny babies on the internet, essentially.
No. People whine on the internet? Never. Guys, This is breaking news here on Shifty Crab News Break. People whine on the internet.
Internet babies, man.
The thing that annoys me is people coming out, the people attacking saying, oh, like, you're being prudish. It's like there's nothing wrong with gratuity. And I'm saying, no, there isn't anything wrong with gratuity if it is towards the plot.
Right.
You know, that's absolutely fine. But if you're having a conversation with anybody, Miranda's the main one in this, is the one that they always use. And half the conversation is from a lower angle looking at one butt cheek, like they're fully clothed and having a conversation. And the other angle is looking at your either femme shep or shepherd's head. Then there is something wrong with that, fundamentally wrong with
Absolutely.
that. And good for them for changing it.
Oh, yeah. And I believe
play the old one.
Oh yeah, I believe the actress even came out like shortly after Mass Effect 2 was released and said she was uncomfortable with the way they sexualized the character, even through the fandom. So like that's also respecting her wishes in a sense. So man, whiny babies on the internet, am I right?
And it was shocking. Like none of the men had these gratuity problems, you know, really.
No.
None of the male characters had any like of these weird angles. It just seemed to be very female based. So
Right.
well,
it's ridiculous.
What if I told you, Vince, that we had more Mass Effect news?
Oh, I would be so excited.
I know.
love Mass Effect.
Don't be excited because we're going from one good point of Mass Effect that they're changing something that they made a mistake with. And then Mass Effect and BioWare are doing that good old thing that they do. We're putting their foot in it again. So Mass Effect Andromeda. So this is over at IGN.com by Adam Bankhurst. Mass Effect Andromeda's 10 potential new alien species were cut due to budget, scope, and cosplay. Okay. The new alien species in Andromeda were even shifted to a more cosplay safe territory. Mass Effect Andromeda could have ended up with 10 new alien species, but they were cut due to a budget, scope, and cosplay considerations. One of the biggest criticisms of Mass Effect Andromeda was the lack of new alien species, especially when the Mass Effect trilogy introduced us to the Krogan, the Asari, the Drell, the Bartarians, the Solarians, the Turians, the Quarian, the Prothean, the Hanar, the Elcor, the Keepers, the Volus, Collectors, Geth, Reapers, and the Vorcha, and more. I didn't realize all those were in there. I would probably looked at them before I read the article. In our Mass Effect Andromeda review, this is obviously IGN, they said, what's bizarre about BioWare went to the trouble of shipping us 2.5 million light years away to introduce only 2 new alien races, plus some robots over more than 50 hours of a campaign and a major side missions. But apparently this wasn't the original plan, and many of the developers on Andromeda recently spoke to The Gamer to discuss why these new alien species never made it to the final game. I think it was a project that couldn't have possibly lived up to expectations, Neil Polner, who was the senior writer on Mass Effect 3 and wrote parts of Andromeda, said. Not just the high bar of the original trilogy, but the logical expectations that anyone would have of Mass Effect going to a whole new galaxy because the scope of the first Mass Effect was so incredibly massive. There was an inherent promise that you'd be getting a massive new experience with a ton of new things, and that was what was supposed to be at first. Mass Effect Andromeda, new species, new lore, and an entire galaxy at your fingertips. But we were only given the budget for 2 new species, plus the Remnant. Not to mention that we couldn't even include all of your Milky Way species, and we weren't going to be able to let you travel throughout the galaxy. This meant we had to develop the story around some pretty glaringly enigmatic limitations. So not only did you get something that felt and was much smaller than what you'd got before, almost everyone playing the game probably had something that they really liked about Mass Effect that just wasn't there. Sorry, that was a long one. But you can read the rest over at IGN.com. Vince.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, it's... I don't want to say we got Peter Molyneux because we didn't. They made a...
Maybe Peter Molyneux-ish.
Yeah, ish. They didn't exactly say we were going to get these 10 new species when the game was first announced. But now coming out of it, it's kind of... Yeah. Ish is the right phrase I would say. It's disappointing.
How can Mass Effect made a lot of money, obviously, for BioWare. How can they not have the budget to bring any more than 2 new species to Andromeda?
Oh, I mean, it's absolutely Anthem, right? They probably had to shift priority at some point towards Anthem and making that. But how do you... It's Mass Effect. It's arguably their biggest franchise aside from Dragon Age, which I'm not that big of a fan of for some reason, even though I like fantasy RPGs. I just prefer Mass Effect over Dragon Age. And they kind of, to say Andromeda was a letdown in the first place is an understatement, because I still have not played all the way through Andromeda, and
Same. I just couldn't finish it.
Mhm. But finding this out, it's just kind of, it's like going to an all-you-can-eat buffet, right? Where you
Yes.
had Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3. You had the whole of the Milky Way galaxy. You had everything you could want, several different species. And then going to a McDonald's and ordering just the basics. You only get 2 species, only 1 new crewmate of a new species. It's just rather disappointing, right? Like, we could have had so much more if they had the money. They obviously had the vision for it, but they just, for some reason, couldn't pull it off.
Yeah, it's just, for me, this is a flagship game.
Mhm.
I know they really went balls in on Anthem,
Yeah,
and that was a mistake.
it was.
But this is a huge franchise game. Mass Effect is
Mhm.
loved by so many people. Like, it has made them a shit ton of money. Pay it forward.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
like, I respect that they were looking at more cosplay friendly aliens
Mhm.
and stuff like that. That show, because obviously Mass Effect has a huge cosplay community, so I like that there was focus on them. But
Oh, yeah.
that's not what they talk about first, second, third in that article.
Mhm.
Like, budget is first. They were limited.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's painful to see. You'd understand if it was an indie company,
Right.
or even not an indie company, but a smaller company. Yeah, they'd have limitations like, guys, we can't do all this, blah, blah, blah. Fine.
Mhm.
They already had a massive backlog of stuff, like a catalog of stuff. And to add more, and what you see in that article is they had to get rid of some of the stuff they already had.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't
Which,
make sense.
it
That game
doesn't.
was just like a calamity from start to finish.
Mhm.
Like, and it's a shame, like, because there are good moments in that game,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
but they're not. There's not enough of them. And when
No,
you read articles like this, it's just infuriating because,
it is, because the potential was there. Obviously, they had a vision, but they couldn't execute on it, which is so disappointing
oh
in
yeah,
the long run. So, what do you think this means for the next Mass Effect game they're working on? Do you think they're going to have the budget for that if this is
yeah,
out there?
I'd say so, purely because are they going to do anything else with Anthem? Probably not.
Probably not.
So they surely they can't let Mass Effect go down another route of Andromeda.
Oh, no.
They're going to have to come back and go, this is Mass Effect that you want on the
Mhm.
next gen. So the current gen console, you want the Milky Way, that's back in there. You want to go back to Andromeda, that's in there as well.
Mhm.
Give people what they want, and like, but most importantly, give people the quality of game that they want.
Oh, yeah.
Tighten up the story, improve the facial animations, and let people explore in a fun way.
Right.
Like,
That
and
was
yeah,
one of the best parts of Mass Effect game. Like, you want that exploration of something new, and then when that something new isn't there, what's the point?
yeah, exactly. But we shall see when we get more details about the new Mass Effect. But we do, at least we have the Legacy Edition to play and remember what a good Mass Effect game looks like.
Oh, yeah, I want to play that game so bad, so bad.
Oh yeah, I can't wait for it. I can't wait for it.
Me
Please
neither.
don't mess that up.
Uh,
Please don't mess
I
it
got a
up.
feeling they can't.
Oh, don't say that. You tempted
Yeah,
it. You tempted it.
I am.
But yeah, anyway, speaking of money, speaking of budgets, this is over at gamesindustry.biz. This was written by Christopher Dring. Games industry investment jumped 77% to 13.2 billion in 2020, and a further 2.2 billion took place in Q4. So that brings it to 15.4 billion overall. Yeah, there isn't too much to say on this one. It's basically these also, but let me just put into a little bit of a side note in this. These only include completed investments. So Microsoft's 7.5 billion acquisition of Bethesda ZeniMax and EA's 1.2 billion buy of Codemasters and Embracer's latest spending spree are not included in this amount. They're not even included.
Jesus. That's insane to think about, because those are obviously big buyouts too. Like I think the Bethesda one, Microsoft and Bethesda was like 7.6 billion or something like
7.5, yeah.
7.5, yeah. That's crazy. Like
crazy numbers. Crazy numbers.
Oh yeah. Which hopefully this means we get more games out of it, which is always a good thing.
Hopefully so. But I think it just shows how important it makes the game industry at the moment.
Oh yeah, like if you look at the games industry right now, it's probably booming, and then especially in COVID times, where you pretty much don't have much to do besides sit at home and play video games. I know, no, because I mean, the movie business is kind of crashing because theaters aren't open. Lots of streaming services are putting stuff out for free, like HBO, and there's a lot just kind of up in the air with other major entertainment services. So it's kind of awesome that video games are seeing this big rise.
Yeah, I think it's really good. And I think that trend's been going for a long time. Obviously, I think we spoke about it on one of the previous episodes. It might have been the podcast, how gaming has become very mainstream when it used to just be a hobby, and now it is a mainstream entertainment service. The Games Awards last year had so many big hosts. You know, you see all the actors that are now appearing in games, like becoming much more frequent, or doing voiceovers in games. Obviously, the big one, obviously, with Keanu Reeves last year being Johnny Silverhand, and how much of a massive moment that was. But there's been a lot of that happening a lot more frequently, and look at obviously Norman Reedus in Death Stranding.
Oh yeah,
not just taking on like little cameo pieces, doing the proper full game. Like, and I think it's becoming more and more a leading entertainment service, and that can only be a good thing.
Oh yeah, and you see even people. Yeah, you see people who usually previously worked on or in other entertainment services, like Guillermo del Toro, who was going to work on new Silent Hills game, and then also made a cameo in Death Stranding, from what I understand. And then you have George R.R. Martin, writer and author of Game of Thrones, working with FromSoft on Elden Ring. Like, it's obviously drawing these new, fresh people in, people who wouldn't necessarily, you would think, would work on video games or anything. So it's obviously a great thing for the industry.
Yeah, and I think you're seeing a lot more crossovers between film and movies that are actually being more successful now than they used to be. You used to dread when a game was coming out based on a game was coming out based on a film. You'd be like, oh no, this is going to be terrible. Like, but then obviously there were some diamonds in the rough through the early noughties and the 90s and stuff like that. But now you look at franchises and they do a good job most of the time. Look how successful, for example, the Lego franchise has been. And their games, they're always big sellers, whether they're your thing or not. They're not necessarily something that I play a lot, but there's a market there for them. And I think you look at the new announcements, obviously Bethesda making an Indiana Jones game, and you obviously are going to have some that's going to be a massive game and a lot of focus on that game.
Same with the
And
James
obviously
Bond game.
James Bond, Star Wars, for example.
Oh yeah.
Like a big part of the new Star Wars strategy going forward is their gaming side of things, obviously at Lucas Games. Here's a question for you. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. You haven't had
Okay.
any prep for this.
Nope.
So if you can't answer it, you fail as a human and you should never come back on the show.
Uh-oh.
With all these crossovers and all these partnerships being made and
Mhm.
all of these like Star Wars and Indiana Jones, what film or TV franchise would you really like to be made into a AAA game? And what studio would you like to make it?
Oh, that's a
Very
great
difficult
question. Very difficult question. But what immediately comes to mind is BioWare make a Lord of the Rings game.
Ooh. What type of Lord of the Rings game are we think? Are we on about like a bit like a story driven where you can exploration RPG style game or more linear?
Oh yeah.
RPG?
I mean, I would say RPG just because you can't, if you were to restrict all of Middle Earth and make it linear, that's
Been done.
not the point of Middle Earth. You want that exploration. You want to be able to walk from Rivendell.
Oh, I think we might have lost Vince for a second. I could try and finish this conversation. He's oh, you're back. You're back.
Oh, good. I'm back.
Guy,
What just happened?
maybe Zoom just
Internet
doesn't like
dipped
Lord
out.
of the Rings. That must be
Maybe
it. But you
Zoom
are back.
doesn't.
So we heard
It's a shame.
letting you walk from Rivendell to, and you left us on a cliffhanger.
You want to be able to walk from Rivendell to Rohan to Gondor, even into Mordor. Although one does not simply walk into Mordor, you'd still want that opportunity, right? You'd want to be able to explore all of Middle Earth rather than just little sections of it being linear. And BioWare could absolutely handle that very well.
They could. They'd be really good at something like that. And I think a great thing would be to have a Lord of the Rings like full on RPG, but you don't play any of the known characters. It's your own character, like, and there's your own story within the Lord of the Rings in like area. It'd be fantastic.
Absolutely, it
Good
would be.
studio to do it as well. Good studio to do it.
I would think them or Bethesda, but Bethesda usually makes pretty buggy games, and you don't want something like Lord of the Rings to do that. No.
Yeah, and I think you need that polish that you'd get.
Oh yeah,
you'd get a sheen to it if it was BioWare. Like,
and you want those interesting characters in your party as well, and that's something BioWare kind of excels at.
Yeah. Sometimes the voice acting is not great though, but
true.
Sometimes it's on brilliant. So good choice though. Good choice. Like, we'll have to ask Terry when he's on the news, see what he was. I'm sure he has some suggestions. He's probably already in his element though. Like, he's having all these Star Wars games. He loves Star Wars, and he's getting a James Bond game. Like he must be loving life at the moment.
Absolutely, he's probably just basking in the greatness that is all these news stories now.
I know.
It's
I don't
a
even know
field
how
day for him.
Oh yeah, he's loving it. But I don't even know how you even answer that question. I wouldn't even.
There's so much good stuff.
Difficult. Yeah.
And there's so much.
Well, actually, no. I know what I'd want. I know what I'd want. And I know there's already been a game, but not the type of game that I want. I would love a John Wick game.
Ooh.
And but a proper John Wick game, not like Hex, which was a great game, but not where you're in control. And I'd probably want it made by probably Warner Brothers, so you could use like the Batman combat system style.
That's interesting.
Who else made that? Who's the other one that makes it?
There's also what?
Sucker Punch? No,
Rocksteady.
Rocksteady, that's the one. Rocksteady. So yeah, Rocksteady, and I'd want them to make a John Wick game
Oh yeah.
with all the
I think they do it.
lore, like all the lore that's there. Like, but then the fighting in Batman is such a good fighting mechanics.
Oh
Like,
yeah. You want that kind of
dodging-
like up close and personal, and then they kind of also ranged
yeah.
style that you get out of those Batman games.
Yeah, they'd have to learn the shooting a little bit, add it
Mhm.
in. But if you could use the shooting kind of just as you would a punch. So when you go
Yeah.
to grab someone, he shoots them and it's a pop in the head with a book, whatever. Like, yeah, that's
That'd
just
be great.
off the top of my head. That's kind of, and they're good at setting atmosphere as well, I think. So
Mhm.
I think yours is more likely, sadly, but it can't be. Someone must be working on a John Wick game.
You would think, right?
It gotta be. Though I
They gotta
guess
be.
any company is going to struggle to get the combat as good as the film.
Oh yeah, because
That's the
you gotta
problem.
imagine they're
And
probably
you
just
have to
gonna
get
go
Keanu.
with. Oh, you'd have to.
You
But
can't
I
not
think
have
he'd still
him.
do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah,
Knowing
unless
Keanu.
he's been burnt by the cyberpunk fiasco.
That's true.
Anyway,
Very
we're
true.
getting sidetracked. This is turning into a podcast. Our final news story, speaking of Warner Brothers games, the Nemesis system patent was approved this week after multiple attempts. This is by John Ryan over at IGN again. They've had a busy few days.
Oh yeah.
Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment, publishers of the Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor and its 2017 sequel Shadow of War, both developed by Monolith Entertainment, have finally managed to secure a patent for their franchise signature Nemesis system. This goes on to say the patent filed as Nemesis characters, Nemesis forts, social vendettas, and followers in computer games effectively codifies the functions of Monolith's Nemesis system and the sum of its parts as the property of Warner Bros. What do you think about this? Has been controversial online.
Yeah.
What do you
This has
think?
been very controversial. And I also kind of agree with a lot of people who have been bringing up the controversy because now Warner Brothers owns basically a gameplay mechanic that no one else can use, which is weird to think about.
Yeah,
Like,
it's a weird one.
It's a weird one. So basically, to boil it down, it'd be like if Fortnite basically patented Battle Royale. Now all of a sudden, nobody else can make Battle Royale games because they have patent to it. And it's when you see an industry like the games industry who have basically picked up ideas over the years, like take Halo for instance, that was the first person shooter where on console basically that made console first person shooters actually good. But imagine if Bungie patented that idea. Now all of a sudden you lose out on things like Call of Duty, Far Cry, like basically WB's being selfish with this idea, which was a great system. Like the Nemesis system is fantastic and could be implemented like many other games. Like, could you imagine like an Assassin's Creed game with the Nemesis system? Like, that'd be fantastic.
That'd be incredible. But for people who don't know what the Nemesis system is, Vince, can you give us a quick 30 seconds on what the Nemesis system is?
Basically, the Nemesis system as it works in Middle-earth, the Middle-earth games, you can basically make common enemies or middle level enemies your nemesis by, say you get into a fight, you injure one of them, they run away, now they're your nemesis. So they can hunt you down or they can level up by becoming like bigger bosses by taking on other named enemies or unnamed enemies, or say like you throw them into a fire but they live and they run away. They're now obviously afraid of fire because you've kicked them into the fire. So it's kind of like this learning AI that then progresses itself without basically your interaction. It's kind of It's a little difficult to explain, but I
No,
think it's kind of
you're
there.
pretty much right about it, though.
Yeah.
I
And
suppose, yeah, that
mm,
it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because you're right, it's a game
it
mechanic.
is.
I
Mhm.
suppose Ubisoft have their own, which is I can't remember what it's
Mhm.
called.
I
This
can.
this
mm,
the census system is what it's called. Like,
what is
so
that?
what that I don't know if you played Watch Dogs Legions.
Oh no, skip that game. I've heard
But
not great
basically,
things
if you
about it.
do something to someone, they
Mhm.
remember it. So it makes them
Okay.
harder to recruit, or something to a faction that they're part of, they remember it. And it's that thing of like, if you kill someone on the street,
Mhm.
then that person obviously can never be hired again. Or if you do something to them, they'll always remember, and they can make things harder for you and stuff like that.
Okay, so it is kind of a variation of the Nemesis
It
system.
is, and this is what they're saying in the IGN article. Um, it'd be unlikely that Warner Brothers would be able to go after Ubisoft
Mhm.
for what they used in Odyssey, for example. The mercenaries in Odyssey hunt you
Mhm.
down and level up and stuff like that,
Mhm.
uh, and Watch Dogs Legions with the sensor system. Now, I agree with you that they shouldn't patent a game mechanic
Yeah.
unless it is
Mhm.
something purely specific to them. If they've
Mhm.
created something purely specific, whether that's I can't even think of anything that you would use that for. Like,
Right.
you shouldn't. You,
It's such a
it
weird
just shouldn't
thing.
happen. I understand
Mhm.
that they're protecting their thing because there's a lot that goes into it and stuff like that. But
Mhm.
you cannot patent something that says basically enemies will learn and come and find you. And if you
Right.
hurt them in a certain way, they might have a fear of that, or they'll learn how to
Mhm.
protect against that. That's just called improving AI.
Right.
Just, I've got really bad news for them because you can do that on chess. You can play against the
Right.
computer on chess and it'll learn how you play. You know, it's
Exactly.
this. I know there's a lot more to it, and I was simplifying it down a lot. So don't come at me in the
Mhm.
comments and say, no, 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 you don't understand. I understand. I just think it's wrong.
Oh yeah,
Like,
it's this weird thing of they had a good idea and now they're keeping it from other developers for having that good idea. I mean, yeah, those systems are in place at like Ubisoft for Watch Dogs and Assassin's Creed, but it's not implemented as full as it was in
no, no, yeah,
Middle Earth. And Middle Earth did it geniusly, honestly. I mean, the loot box conundrum aside, like the Middle Earth games and that AI mechanic was fantastic.
yeah.
But now holding on to that idea, not allowing the industry to grow and change without it, is very selfish and kind of a dick move, honestly.
I know exactly. And can you imagine if Ubisoft did this and turn around and says, okay, we're patenting that you can recruit anybody in the game
Mm-hmm.
to be in your team. No other game can ever do this. Like, it's ridiculous.
It's insane. It's gatekeeping to a certain level,
Yeah,
honestly, which is kind of a weird thing to say. But
but it is.
yeah,
It is like that is a big part of what an indie game could be. You know, where they could really like focus on this Nemesis style system in a totally different way, make it their own. But then what Warner Bros are going to go, you've got Nemesis, and they come after you and they learn from you. This is too close. I
yeah,
don't know, but anyway, I think it's always bad to leave it on a sour note. But
yeah.
you think we'll see
But
another game from them in the Shadow? Is it the Shadow series? Is that what it's called? Yeah,
I mean,
Shadow.
yeah, technically, I guess I don't think so. Honestly, I mean, with this patent, it could maybe give a little bit of hope that that will come into play, but maybe they could also shift that over to like one of the Batman Arkham games or something like that, and not specifically use it for the Middle Earth.
Yeah.
Which is disappointing, but
we shall see. We shall see.
We shall.
But you know what? This leaves a bit of a sour taste in my mouth, Vince. So I think we should end on some good news.
All right. I mean,
And this isn't gaming news.
Mm-hmm.
This is Shifty Crab News. So if you're enjoying our podcasts and our news, you'll be happy to hear that you don't have to look at our faces. You can go over to currently Spotify, and if you search the Shifty Crab podcast, you will find us there. At the moment, it is our podcast that is live on there. The news will go on there soon. But if you want to catch up on our podcast while you're on the go and don't want to look at the best beard in the business, then I don't know why you wouldn't. I zone out when I'm editing. When I'm editing, I could just zoom in on the beard, to be honest, like for an hour. But yeah, you can head over there and you can watch, or you can listen to the podcast, which I think is quite cool.
Oh yeah, give us a listen.
It'll soon be on Amazon, Google, and Apple as well. Or you can head over to Podbean as well. It's there, and you can listen to the podcast there. And as it's Sunday here, but you're hearing this on Monday. What have we got coming up this week? We have another news on Wednesday. We have the news coming out on Friday, and another podcast coming out on Sunday. They're so lucky, Vince. Do you know? They're so lucky to see our faces.
Stuff. They are.
Yeah.
And now, even if you don't want to see our faces and just want to hear our buttery smooth voices, you can do that on Spotify.
Also, guys, we're going to start reading out some of your comments as well on the news. So if you have any comments regarding what you've heard today, chuck them down in the comment section below, and you might get mentioned on the news when we do our roundup. And I've been Adam. That's been Vince. Yeah, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.